Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode from Professional Mind Care. We're very excited to have here Adam Beach. He's going to introduce himself in a couple of seconds. Just so you know, a Professional Mind Care doesn't render any medical services. If you consider that you need any medical services or therapy services, please seek for help. You will never regret asking for help. Welcome, Adam. We're very excited to have you here. Actually, you're the first guest that we have from the legal field as a lawyer. We previously had Joshua Alter, who is in the higher education field from a very prestigious law school in Chicago. But you're the first lawyer that we have here. We're very excited to have you here. Welcome. Can you introduce yourself, Adam?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mariella. Thank you, Ryan. So my name is Adam Beach. I'm originally from Scotland and I went to law school in England. I started my career in England and then moved to Mexico City, spent some time working there, and most recently worked in San Francisco, where I live now, at a fairly large law firm in the tech and IP team as an associate. That was my most recent job, and right now I'm taking a break and resting and trying to recover from 9 years so far of fairly intense legal work.
That's amazing. Welcome, Adam. We're happy to have you here. I will say my first question is, based on previous conversations that we've had, I noticed a particular interest from you on this topic of mental health at work and the general employee well-being. So why does this resonate with you or with your story, or why are you very interested into these topics?
I'm very interested in this because I know how difficult it can be to work as a lawyer in these organizations. There are a lot of demands coming from everywhere, from more senior associates, from junior partners, senior partners, and ultimately the clients. And it's a really pressurized environment in itself. And I experienced that quite frequently when I was working as a lawyer. The demands of the law job doesn't create much space for other stuff that's going on in life. And other stuff does go on in life. I've had some fairly complicated and challenging experiences in the last few years. And if I hadn't taken care of my own mental health in that time, then I don't think I would have been able to cope in the job, because it's demanding in itself and because we have other stresses in life. So I got to almost a fifth year associate at my previous firm, but I've been working for long enough that I've worked with junior lawyers before and heard firsthand a lot of the struggles that they're going through, the difficulty in speaking up, and the belief that you can't really speak up because it will harm your career. And it's important for me to help people understand, now that I understand myself, that these things aren't true, and that while our career is extremely important and a big part of our identity, it's not going to be conducive to a long-term sustainable career if we can look after ourselves and let our employers and colleagues know when it's appropriate that we might be struggling with something either within work or outside of work.
Yeah. Just based on that last part you said about, your colleagues and your, people you've worked for and worked under. Can you speak a little more to, kind of your background working in different firms in different cities in different countries? Is there any kind of education or something that you kind of gravitated towards or really saw value in, say, like in a specific country or industry or something like that in terms of like the mental health support available?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't want to make sweeping generalizations of cultures and different jurisdictions and what it means to work in them. But I have my own experiences that in the UK, there was, I think it just goes with the territory of a kind of generally a pretty good social safety net in the UK. And that translates to 25 days vacation each year in our contracts. We did training in my previous firm where you could be a well-being ambassador, and you're trained to spot signs in other people if they seem to be not doing well and they might need someone to talk to, but might be staying quiet. So those services were available, and we had a director of well-being, we had head of well-being at the firm, and it did seem that these conversations could happen and that you were encouraged to take care of yourself. So that was really positive. And then sometimes it comes down to us, the lawyers, and again, this is a generalization, lawyers tend to be quite high achieving, and part of being a high achiever means not admitting when you don't perceive yourself as achieving in that moment. So that was a great experience. I moved to Mexico. It was a slightly different culture. There were kind of the global initiatives would trickle down into the local office where I was working in Mexico. And it was considered important to have and be part of that ecosystem. Sometimes when partners haven't really taken the time to look after their own mental health and to look after themselves and to set boundaries in their careers, it's not a known thing to them that they can do the same. And when other colleagues try and do the same, in my experience, it's met with a bit of a wall and some resistance. And that was the experience I had in Mexico. That there was different expectations, and it might be firm specific, but different expectations and levels of what's acceptable from a cultural working perspective. In the US, the demands are even higher. I think having worked in a few countries, they definitely win the award for hardest working. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but it's just a thing. And there are, again, loads of initiatives. There are been well-being initiatives, well-being officers, and I used those services at my previous firm, and it's amazing to have someone to talk to. I have someone who helps me, a therapist outside of work. If you don't, it's a really, I think, an amazing starting point to have someone within your organization who you can speak to confidentially and work with someone who can help you get through the tough work times. But not that probably wouldn't be my only person for help in that way. The only thing is that the demands are that come from the clients. Law firms have their own expertise. They have experts in certain areas. So there's not a huge amount that can distinguish law firms. And the pressure to keep clients and be available and be responsive is really high. It's almost existential for law firms, especially the large ones where part of their business model is that they're available all the time. And if the law firm is available all the time, then the lawyers are available all the time. So these well-being initiatives are amazing, but they're only so great as the ecosystem in which they operate allow them to actually function.
Yeah. Like if you're able to take advantage of it and actually seek help and have the time to do so.
Exactly. And I think it's on us as well as lawyers and as staff to actually stand up and say and put our hand up and take what might seem like a risk, because it does seem scary to stand up and say, like, I'm not feeling great right now. I did that a couple of times when it was just really difficult. And I'm not blaming the partners. It's just unfortunate that when I say, like, you know, I'm not doing very well right now, and let's say there's only 3 days left till signing, and everyone just wants to push, and it's very difficult to bring someone on and bring them up to speed and do a handover, then you're kind of left with the partner saying, you know, hang in there. It's only 3 days. You managed to get through because we pushed through and we're capable of pushing through. But there's only so long and so many times you can just keep pushing through before a sort of more problematic situation arises.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're great resources, but if we're asked to like keep pushing through it doesn't give the opportunity to use.
Yeah. I think eventually that would catch up to you and take its toll. Like whether it's 3 days or 3 hours, if you need a break or you feel like you deserve a break or something like that. I feel like it should be like a right to do so. Yeah, the pressure in the legal industry is definitely very high.
Yeah, with the well-being initiatives that you have access to, we've identified that the most common challenge so that these well-being initiatives have the impact that they intend to have is a stigma. Stigma for people feeling the need of having access to these initiatives or needing a therapist and stuff like that, because you know that at work, like, we even have different generations with the manager and senior positions and younger generations. Have you identified stigma being a challenge, not only in the legal industry, because this is the most common challenge for any industry with well-being initiatives? Have you faced any stigma?
I wonder if it's a great question. I wonder if it's stigma mixed with lack of understanding. I have a specific example that comes to mind. It was kind of soon after I joined my previous firm and took like a 2 weeks vacation almost immediately because it was pre-planned before I joined. And then I asked for 2 more weeks vacation 2 months later, which understandably like raised alarm bells in terms of my commitment. And I could tell that there was kind of, yes, I'm British and yes, I come with a different vacation mentality. but this was taking the piss, as we would say. So we had a conversation, and I said, there's some stuff that I've just had a difficult breakup, and it's really challenging. In the course of dealing with this, I'm also dealing with some stuff that's, from the past that I haven't worked through yet, which is fairly common. And the partner was extremely receptive and really, like, I felt super comfortable not going into detail, but talking about what I'm going through at the moment and what I was going through at the time. And I felt no stigma with that person, but their advice was, talk about your breakup. A lot of the partners have been through that kind of situation here, but maybe not talk about the other stuff because people might not understand. So that was like a very clear direction. It's like, yes, people get that. That's relatable, but don't mention that because we won't quite get it. And I'm not expecting, it's a big law firm. I'm not working in a very like fuzzy environment. And if I was, it'd be very different and people would be much more aware of and considerate of what I'm going through or what I was going through and what other people are going through. But yeah, there was some stigma there. It's like, if you talk about this, people won't really get it, and you might not get like the sympathy that you need or are looking for. So it's important, to be able to look after ourselves and understand what we need and communicate that and then see what happens, rather than being worried about what will happen and then altering what we actually need and standing up for taking care of ourselves, basically.
And just on that what you just said, how did you? I know you kind of mentioned like that you felt the partner you were talking to was very receptive and very open, but also at the same time you kind of mentioned that they kind of suggested like, hey, like maybe don't mention this to others, kind of thing. Did that kind of like conflict with you like internally in terms of like where to go maybe next time you had a problem with regards to having like a mental health issue, just needing some time or something?
It maybe did, right? And I don't see that like necessarily as such a bad thing. It's almost like accepting in some way that there are limitations to what a law firm can offer in terms of support. From that perspective, it's like, I want them to support me just based on what I'm going through at the moment. So if I say like I'm dealing with stuff, that is difficult to deal with or whatever, like I'm going through something in my life, I don't need them to understand like what it is. I don't need them to have a solution, but I do need them to just accept that like this person's a hard worker. This person has been a hard worker their whole life. They're here now and they're going through something difficult, and we're going to give them a little bit of leeway right now. We don't need to know exactly what it is because that information may not be relevant. But if it is relevant and if it's shareable, then yes, you absolutely should be able to share it. In that situation, I did kind of accept like, yeah, maybe I don't need to like overly share what it is that I'm going through, just that I'm going through something. And that's all my employer really needs to know to be able to support me.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
And I'd like to dive more into the initiatives, the well-being initiatives, because for me that's new. I've had almost 9 years of experience as a lawyer and in 3 different law firms, 2 international law firms. There were not many resources in terms of mental health. The well-being initiatives, which I always criticize, is because they call them wellness and they only focus them on giving you like gym discounts. For me, that has nothing to do with well-being, because if you don't even have 7 hours of sleep or you don't have the time to eat properly, like you're not going to have the time or energy to go to the gym. So like these well-being initiatives, if you could explain more, because people need to know about this, and because not all of the law firms or companies implement this.
Yeah, there were some really great options that they offered us in my previous firm. We had a subscription to Calm, the meditation app, and that was provided for free. And we got periodic emails with different recommendations, and let's say what's Thanksgiving coming up and how to manage difficult conversations with your family. I remember we got that kind of email. I think one came out recently about the US election, so tips on how to have difficult conversations. We also did partnerships with yoga, Core Power Yoga, I think. So partnerships with the yoga studio to have chair yoga sessions that we could all dial into. So a lot of these kind of physical activities that we had. I can't remember what else we had off the top of my head, I just remember I would always file the emails because there was a great content in the well-being emails that we got. And it showed above all that notwithstanding that it's a massive law firm and it's profit driven and client focused, just having those emails and having that person is like a tacit permission that it's okay to talk about these things to some extent.
Well, that sounds
Yeah.
great.
That's really great that you guys had that. Just a question for you, like personally, like what sort of strategies do you like use to maintain like, a healthy work-life balance? Is there anything that you do that, that makes you feel zen or makes you feel good at the end of the day or during your
Yeah, I meditate in the morning, which is when I do it. I do it most days. I'm pretty disciplined now, but that sets me off on a nice start. I practice yoga. There was one moment, I think it was a federal holiday, and I was working. I learned quickly after joining my previous firm that federal holidays are federal holidays, but not necessarily holidays for us. And I was a little bit frustrated that I was working on, I think it was Labor Day, and I'd booked a yoga class, and I was asked to give my availability for a client call. And I booked this yoga class quite a bit in advance. The client call wasn't especially urgent. And me as like a fairly junior lawyer, I just said, no, I'm not available this time. And it seems very innocuous, but when the model is that we're available all the time, saying I wasn't available because I'd booked yoga and I knew I needed to go to yoga, like I really was feeling that was important at the time. And I didn't give a reason and I just went. And I wouldn't suggest doing that frequently as a junior lawyer, but I built up enough credit, I thought, and this was a plan, and it was the client demand was malleable at that moment. It wasn't so urgent. So that was how I took care of myself. It's not just the doing of the yoga, but it was 5 p.m. Labor Day class. And I just said to myself, like, you need to do this and work. It's going to be okay. And I have often felt anxious at work and anxious to perform and be available and be responsive. So for me personally, that was quite a hard email to send. And I suspect that other lawyers would also find it hard to set that boundary. So yeah, meditation, yoga, and setting these boundaries, eat well, just like the classic stuff, and finding someone at work who isn't completely drinking the Kool-Aid and is having the best time ever and never expresses any concerns about the fact that it's difficult or is never struggling. I tend to gravitate to someone who's able to speak openly about the challenges of working in that kind of environment. So that was certainly another self-care technique, is having someone at work who understands, who I can have just maybe a tiny vent with, and having someone who I can confide in that way. It's harder to have those conversations with people outside of work because people who don't work in that kind of crazy competitive environment tend to not really understand like why you're there in the first place. So it's helpful to talk to other similarly situated people about what you're going through.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. That makes sense.
Yeah. Also, in addition to wellness initiatives, some of the challenges for implementing a mental health program within a company, any company, it is the role of leaders getting involved in these activities, being familiar with this topic. What role do you consider that leaders, being these senior managers, partners, or any other specific role, what role do you think they play while implementing mental health programs or initiatives?
Great question. Well, they set the culture, right? So they set the tone.
Example, yeah.
Yeah. And if they're appearing that they're looking after themselves, or they're like taking care of themselves, or they seem well, it's not their responsibility to have like a life that we want to live. But it is more inspiring when you see leaders who seem happy and content in what they do and have like a full life. If they have a family that they want to spend time with their family, it's kind of healthy work patterns and healthy life patterns that can trickle from the top. That would be the responsibility of leaders if they're able to do that. I didn't enjoy working with people who didn't place any emphasis on their own social life. So the expectation was that I wouldn't do the same, or I would do the same. I would also neglect my personal life. So that would be the first thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And would you be able to describe like kind of, I guess like your understanding of mental health and like in the workplace specifically? like maybe like in terms of more like its function and its role and its importance, just with regards to like, daily support and life and work-life balance? Is there anything that, maybe you've noticed that stands out to you a little bit more, or something that you believe that if a law firm or a company was to do this, like they would see this positive result?
Just talking more. That's such a good question. It's like just talking more and checking in more. It's kind of weird to say at law firms. Not that long ago, I could tell that there was a junior associate that was struggling because they were working with me on multiple projects, and I was struggling, and they were doing more of the lifting, and I don't know what else they were working on. And I could tell that they were struggling, and like the human in me was like, I need to ask this person how they're doing, and I didn't want to because I was like, well, what if they're not doing well? What am I going to do? Like, I don't have capacity to take on any of their work. Like, I can't. And I'm also just like trying to keep myself above water. Ultimately, I did ask him how he was doing, and he said he was doing fine. So I was like, fine, I'm off the hook. I asked, and I don't have to do any more work. So having these conversations and having them from a human level, not from like I'm covering my own ass level, and making people aware that if you are really struggling, then you can put your hand up. Like, you really, really can. And this is what will happen if you do. These are the solutions that we have. And we have loads of resources. Some people in the team are quiet. I don't think we truly know that we can speak up. I just don't think we do. And I don't think we have enough conversations about how we're doing because we're scared of the answer. It's like asking someone in the street and saying, "How are you?" "Oh, I'm sad." And you're like, "Oh no, no, I didn't want that one. Like, I didn't want to hear that." So you
Yeah.
don't, and it's the same at work. Like, you don't ask because you just don't want to hear. We're not going deep and we're not going super personal at work. We don't need to do that. But it's like having more informal conversations and being able to spot when someone is harder when we're not working in the office, but it's still possible. Like, being able to spot when someone isn't doing well, and like, you don't have to say to someone else, or just having a mechanism to say, like, maybe check in on this person. Or like, kind of like my first law firm that I worked at, they had trained well-being ambassadors within the staff so they could have a chat with a peer. It's not HR, it's not a business function, it's not like a boss per se, but just someone who's kind of a peer who can notice, like, you've seemed like you're not yourself lately, like, how are things going? Like, those kind of conversations I think would like open up. They don't have to be groundbreaking, but these like mini conversations could open up just a general culture of like chatting about that stuff, not just about our deals and stuff like that.
Yeah, because also that's representation, right? When you have these mental health champions or like well-being ambassadors, I think you also feel relatable to them, and it's more easy to open about that and open the communication about these topics, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're on a level. You're not, this person doesn't have any say on your career. You're not exposing yourself in that way. And this kind of ties to like having a confidant. Even better if you can have a confidant in the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have one question, Adam. What do you see changing in the upcoming years? Because, I mean, we've both been almost 9, 10 years in the legal field, but besides the legal industry, we see the generations changing the conversation about this topic. Baby boomers retiring, most of them by 2030, the Gen Z leading the workforce already this year in the States, actually. What do you see changing in the upcoming years?
Good question. I don't know. I can see the trend that I saw most recently is the different. It's funny, like baby boomers would call it like lack of commitment and like lack of appreciation and ungratefulness. There's a general attitude shift from when I guess my parents started their career, from like, you're lucky to have this job, to like, no, I can probably find something else and I'll be okay if I don't have this job, and not as much company loyalty. So then I say Gen Z, kind of the recent grad generation who are starting their careers now, for the most part, it seems that that generation are not going to accept sacrificing everything else in their lives for the sake of work and sacrificing their relationships. And it looks like there might be a chasm between that mentality, and there is a chasm that's been well documented between that mentality and the boomer mentality. I don't know how that will work with clients. I don't know how that will work with bias demands, because there are always enough people of any generation who are willing to work really, really hard and sacrifice everything. So we'll see what happens. I don't know who's going to have a louder voice, like the people who are happy to keep working intensely and not have much freedom and independence, knowing that it's only, let's say, for 2 years and then they're going to move on to something else. So if you have enough people that are willing to perpetuate it, regardless of their generation, then it would be hard to break it. But it seems like there are enough people who are wanting to have conversations about mental health. And Gen Z are now, they tend to be the largest part of the workforce. They're the most recent grads. At some point, people will have to take notice, because the majority will grow, I think, of people who care about mental health and who are prioritizing it. It's a voice that's growing, and it's going to be interesting to see how that fits with the boomer mentality. I don't know what you think, what you've seen.
Yeah, and I think the needs are becoming very loud because of the rates, even from suicide, from depression, the health the health costs for companies are increasing. So yeah, I consider Gen Z are pushing a lot of these mental health initiatives, and they're actually demanding some change. You know, they say there's like an intergenerational injustice that the Gen Zs are feeling due to global issues, including war, including environmental issues, financial issues. So yeah, I guess that's my understanding of why Gen Zs are pushing more for these initiatives, and I think they will definitely be expecting for a change, which obviously it will depend on each industry, but I think the demands are just there, and there will be a need for change for sure.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, hopefully. And I think just with regards to that, I think just more advocation for work-life balance is really crucial. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of industries, legal being one of them, so many other industries that, you know, when you sign an employment contract, you know, you see your hours are from, say, 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. And, you know, so many people are working from 9 a.m. until 1 a.m. And, you know, it's almost become that sort of expectation where, you know, if you want to climb the corporate ladder, if you want to move up, if you want to be here in another 3 or 4 years, or if you want to even leave this company and get another job somewhere else that's higher paying or a better position, you know, it's just become the norm to do that. And, you know, almost like if you don't like it, you know, we have 300 other people that'll have your position. You know, me personally, I don't think that that's fair. I don't think that should be like the way, you know, the way companies are structured, especially when, you know, you have so many people that, you know, are so many Gen Zers that are coming out, and they, you know, they would probably prefer to make a little less money, but have, you know, have the time off from 6 p.m. till, you know, 1 a.m. to have their social life, to go see their families and things like that, and still have their job the next day and have that security. So I think, you know, based on that last question, I think, you know, it's something that's definitely needed, and seems like it's on the forefront.
Yeah.
Yeah, and something very important for people that can be listening to this, that when we advocate for work-life balance, that doesn't mean to work less or putting less effort. That means better strategies for time management, for teamwork collaboration, for keeping your own health, which that also has an impact in the budget of companies. So that's also very important to mention, because people often criticize a lot of the Gen Z people, that they just don't really want to work, that they're lazy, and it's not like that, because having better like work-life balance practices, that's not going to lead to being less productive. That can lead to becoming even more productive, and that's also very important for people that are in managing roles to identify and to implement better management practices.
I on that note, Mariella, the management point from like I've never run a law firm, for a pure numbers point of view, and I'm just like making this up, but if you have someone who bills like 10% less each month, an associate who bills 10% less each month, the cost of, let's say, that person taking 3 months for a mental health break and then them resigning, probably doing less work while they're thinking of resigning or while they're burnt out. And then you have to find someone, pay a recruiter, pay the, like, a sign-on bonus, maybe train them up, train the IT, like, it just makes more sense to me, if we're not so short-termist from a business point of view, to keep employees, just like work them that little bit less then they'll stay and you don't have to go through all the cycle. But then it seems like that's part of the business model. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and turnover rates are
Yeah.
increasing and increasing. Well, that's very serious.
That's
And
real.
yeah, and it does cost companies more to hire other people, right, in these roles to fill them, do training. They have to take time away from the tasks they're trying to do, which slows down internal processes of, for example, wellness initiatives. If they have to fill the same position every 4 months, it slows down.
That's right.
I don't have any more questions. I don't think. Mariela, do you have anything else?
No, I don't know, anything else you want to share with us, Adam?
Just to thank you both for doing this kind of work. It's really important. And I was lucky that I developed lots of tools to take care of myself and then left at a time where I was still getting like the fear when emails came in towards the end, which I guess is a sign of burnout. But I managed and I got myself in a position to leave. And I know that others don't have that same privilege and have to make it work somehow where they are. So I'm grateful to you both for raising awareness about this and helping people take care of themselves and helping organizations take care of their people.
Yeah, about this connection with your phone, that reminded me something to say about the upcoming trends. Regulations are changing. That's another fact. That the regulations are also changing. Even it was recently approved in Australia, where they have this right for disconnecting from work after hours, where managers can't reach out to them to their phone after the normal working hours. That trend is also coming to Mexico. It's been discussed in the local Congress of Mexico City to also amend the local constitution, to include this right for workers. So that's something that we also need to keep updated with. Regulations are changing, and so it's not only the generational demands and the collective needs, but also regulations, which that's also very exciting to see in the upcoming years. Well, thank you so much, Adam. We had
Yeah,
a
thank you
great
so
time,
much.
and we appreciate you sharing a lot of your story, insights, and all your incredible ideas that you have.
It's a pleasure. Thank you both.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you so much, Adam. Enjoy your time off and everything, and
Well deserved.
yeah, well deserved for sure. Hope
Thank you.
hope it's nice and you can catch your breath and everything, and just enjoy. And thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank
Ciao.
you.